Thank you all again for joining today. This is Coping Through Creativity Using Creative Arts, part of the 2026 AYA Talk Series. So, what will we be discussing today? We're going to go through a couple different topics today. First, we'll start with mental health, as well as, what impacts our ability to cope. Next, we'll talk about what is art therapy, as well as what is music therapy. I'm sure some of you may have experience with it. We hope to elaborate a little bit more on that. Then we will do a creative-based experiential. So Jamie and I are really excited to do kind of this combination of art and music experiential to um, help with mindfulness and grounding and give you a little bit of a taste of how music and art therapy could be beneficial to you. And then we will explicitly discuss the benefits of the creative arts therapies, as well as we love to give some nice concrete skills afterwards. So we will give you a bunch of different ideas for creatively coping at home.
So let's get into it then. The whole reason that we're here. So let's kind of start by laying the foundation of the fact that experiencing any part of a cancer journey can be really, really difficult, can bring really, really positive moments, can bring really, really challenging moments. And so there's so many emotional impacts of cancer that I have heard from many of the people that I have worked with. And some of these things that we might see or that you might experience, I want you, as I share these, to kind of think to yourself if you might resonate with any of these, or if there's anything that you might add to the list or something that you're not hearing, that's something you might feel. So, starting with grief and loss. Grief and loss is not specific to death and dying, although that is what we often think of when we think about grief or loss, but rather we can think about it as, experiencing loss of expectation, loss of what you thought life might look like, or loss of what you thought you might be doing at this point in your life, grieving the loss of a job, or grieving the idea of being a full-time student at college or in high school because of the impacts and the requirements of life with cancer. I've spoke with a lot of patients of mine who have had to leave school and be homeschooled for the rest of their semester to be able to go to their chemo appointments. And that's a big life change, and that comes with a lot of grief and loss. Of course, things like anxiety and depression, lots of different emotions, feelings of guilt for having to go through what you are going through. Some people report feeling emotionally numb because at some point when you are experiencing all that comes with cancer care, it can be really overwhelming, all of the emotions that you might be experiencing. And so your brain might be trying to find a way to protect yourself from all of those emotions and kind of creating this numbness, this feeling of not joy, not sadness, just numbness. I hear a lot of anger and increased irritability, whether that's from angry reactions to the things that you're experiencing, or that's irritability caused by medications or caused by hospitalization. Of course, isolation and fear of recurrence. But then also, there's the other side of hope and gratitude, and all of these feelings that exist at the same time that can feel really dysregulating to move in between. And then also, too, thinking about your families and your loved ones that are experiencing this alongside you and how their emotions impact the emotions that you feel. So, I'm curious, you can pop in the chat if there's anything else that you might add to that, any other emotional experiences that you've had, whether you are a person that has been on a cancer journey, whether you're a staff member that has worked with people experiencing cancer. And I have this really cool emotional sensation wheel from Lindsay Brahman. And if you've never heard of Lindsay Brahman before, I highly recommend looking at her Instagram because she has some really tangible ways of looking at mental health, especially during periods of dysregulation. Because I don't know if you all have ever been there, but when somebody asks how you're feeling, there's a million things you might be feeling, but the only words that might come out of your mouth are not the things that feel exactly that way. And so she does a really good job at putting words and sensations to these types of things. So using that wheel as a guide or maybe as inspiration, is there anything else that you might add? You can pop it in the chat and I'll give some time. Or is there anything that you personally resonate with? And one of the things, too, that can be really helpful when you're identifying what you may be feeling at whatever stage of your treatment or journey that you're going through is what might be the things that are contributing to that emotion. And the reason for this is that it can help you figure out when you might be activated to feel something, when you might be able to expect and better prep for and create coping strategies like the ones we're going to share with you today. I see someone said just a general feeling of unsteadiness, feeling aimless, and feeling lonely. Not only just feeling isolation, but also feeling lonely. Yeah, does anyone else want to pop anything in there?
We
I see someone else put feelings of shock, feeling insecure. Mm-hmm. Not just feelings of anxiety, but feelings of shock, that first initial acute anxiety.
All right. Well, ignore that scribble across the middle, but when we talk about the emotional impacts of cancer, it's important to note like it's not just emotional, right? It's physical, it's mental. So what's happening is also in your body and your brain, and they're all working together. So instead of just focusing on one feeling like anxiety or anger, like from the previous slide, I wanted to share a broader framework that helps explain why so many different reactions often show up during cancer. And of course, as an art therapist, I love a good visual framework. So here at the center, this is what we call our window of tolerance. So in the center of the beige, that's our window, which is basically the range of emotions and sensations that your body can kind of tolerate and handle without feeling overwhelmed. So as we go through life, now look at the squiggle line. Our emotions naturally go up and down within this yellow window. And so we can feel things like stress and pain and sadness and excitement. And all of that is normal and it's all well tolerated. And most of the time, if we get a little bit close to that red or blue zone, um, we can use coping skills or a support system to kind of bring ourselves back into this range. Um, but in general, again, we tend to stay within our window of tolerance. Next slide. But when we experience adversity, let's say like cancer, something changes. And so cancer is not just stressful, it's an ongoing threat to the body. And so the brain and the body and our emotions are going to respond. So in response, our nervous system shifts into a protective mode. And one way it does this is by making that window of tolerance smaller. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? It's just our body's attempt to regulate from all of this overwhelmingness that Jamie was alluding to earlier. Right? So a smaller window helps us preserve energy. It helps us react faster. It helps us stay alert, especially through, that survival mode. But the consequence of this protection is that it's harder to feel grounded, flexible, curious, or present. And so that same squiggle line, right, like that natural ebb and flow, ups and downs that we experience, now it's very easy for it to be in the hyper arousal and the hypo arousal. And these emotions can feel bigger and more intense. Um, and things that were overwhelming just suddenly don't feel that way anymore. And so our body can't stay in that high alert state forever. Oh, sorry. Can you go to the previous slide? There we go. So when it gets too much, right, our body is kind of swinging between that hyper and hypo arousal. And so even if this doesn't necessarily feel helpful, our brain and our body are doing exactly what it's designed to do to help us stay regulated and stay safe. So when you experience things like anger or anxiety or numbness or isolation or insecurity, right? These aren't necessarily signs of weakness, they're signals, right? This is our nervous system saying, hey, this is a lot and I'm trying to protect you and, you know, go from there. All right. Now we could go to the next slide. Thank you. So in other words, um, you know, maybe this is another way you can interpret all of those other signs or slides, right? It's all of these things, and all of a sudden, this minor inconvenience feels like that tipping point. And oftentimes, when you're at this point, distraction can be helpful, right? It can give you those like moments of respite of feeling grounded again to help you stay in that window of tolerance, no matter how big or how small it is. But over time, it doesn't really change the size of that window, right? So if it's smaller, it may just stay there. And this is where gaining awareness of when distraction can be helpful and when you might need just a little bit more, whether it's through self reflection or talking to a friend or talking with a therapist. That's where these things can be helpful. So, different professionals like psychologists, social workers, counselors, music art therapists, you know, they're all focused on helping expand your window of tolerance, help manage all aspects of care, not just your medical care. And not only that, having supportive people to talk to, feeling trust and comfort with your medical team, talking to a therapist, engaging in mindfulness. These are all things that can help you expand that window of tolerance again. And so maybe even creativity might be one of those ways. So, next slide. So I imagine what drew a lot of people to this talk today is because maybe at some point you either found a creative arts-based activity helpful to you, maybe you just identify as a creative person. You know, I hear things often like, I love knitting or learning an instrument or those adult coloring books that everybody gifted me. Um, those are the creative outlets that have been so helpful, right? So I want to take some time and talk more about those creative outlets and how we can do more with them. With art therapy, I there's many like jargony definitions of art therapy, but for me, at the end of the day, right, so many of our experiences are often stored as images, right? Our memories, we also experience it somatically, things like visuals, sounds, those all come before language, which is why it's often really hard to put some of these experiences and emotions to words. So that's where art therapy can be really helpful because it not only helps you explore things non-verbally, but also in this tangible, creative way. And then with the guidance of an art therapist, it can help you process some of these things to words over time. A couple things that are really important about art therapy. It's really, this is like the art therapist mantra. It is process over product. That is like completely different from art education. Maybe the last time you did art was in like elementary school, and maybe somebody told you your art wasn't very good or something like that. Someone always has a story. But really, it's about the process. What was that process like for you rather than focusing on what does the end product look like for me? It's just like traditional talk therapy, it's also addressing specific therapeutic goals. And the materials themselves are used for expression and communication. So to me, I always view it as it's an expansion of the ways that you can communicate. And most importantly, no artistic ability is required. So it, again, is not about how beautiful something looks. It's really what was that process like for you? What was the experience of creating this like for you? And that is what really matters in art therapy. Next slide. This is another visual I like to use. People say there's two camps of art therapy, one using art as therapy, and then on the other side, really art psychotherapy. I like to view this on a spectrum, right? So one end, it might be that, you have done art and that in of itself was so therapeutic. Um, you thought you were making art for 5 minutes. The next thing you knew, it was 2 hours. And then on the other end of the spectrum is really intentionally using art as a form of communication and expression and symbolic communication for your experiences and kind of everything in between, right? So an individual art therapy session or, by work individually with someone, one session we might be in that therapeutic art camp. The next session we might be moving on the other side of that spectrum, right? So there's always that check-in process to know where on that spectrum do we need to be today.
So it's kind of cool when Jane and I came together to make this presentation. We were really excited to learn a little bit about what each other did. And I remember in that reflection, I had shared that I use art all the time to support myself in processing things. And I know that I definitely could benefit from an art therapist. And then she was saying, well, I use music all the time in my life to help me go through things. And so it was just such a beautiful moment of there's so many different modes of creative expression, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's visual art, dramatic arts, exercise, therapeutic recreation. There's so many other forms of expression other than just verbal expression. And those are the things that creative arts therapies are really good at, and that's what we're for. So just like Jane said, there's so many different definitions of music therapy that are quite honestly really boring and make no sense. So my definition of it is that we all know how music can often hold us when we are feeling different emotions. It's why when we're feeling really upset, we go and we throw on our rage song, or we go and we throw on a song to cry to. It's why when we're feeling really excited or when we're having a birthday, we play Happy Birthday. We play our exciting songs. I mean, it's why the song Celebration by Kool and the Gang is used for everything. And it's because music holds us wherever we might be feeling. And so, in the context of music therapy, music gets this opportunity to hold us when we're feeling hopeless and affirm our experiences when we're feeling alone, and also creating connection where we need support. So, in the least fancy way possible, when I usually tell people at the hospital what my job is, I say simply, I'm a therapist who uses music to support people. And this looks very different depending on what we might be doing together. But I want to also highlight the principles that Jane was talking about with art therapy because they're very similar in music therapy. The idea of the process over the product. This idea that the therapeutic value and the things that are going to be most helpful occur within the process of the music creation or within the process of dissecting lyrics. There is no musical ability required. It's a common theme in the creative arts, as Jane alluded to, of we often will make something, express our creativity, and then we all have some story about how somebody shot it down and told us our voice was bad, or we can't play this instrument, or we can't play that. There is no musical ability required to engage in music-related coping tools. All of musical instruments and lyrics and songs and songwriting are all used as tools for expression. And music therapy also addresses specific therapy goals. So now it's got me in a music and art therapy collaboration, so that's in my brain, in the back of my head somewhere. Anyway, talking about music therapy. So, this might look like using song lyrics to reflect on and process our personal experiences. Sometimes being able to put words to what we are feeling or what we have experienced is really, really difficult, but somebody else has put those into words, into a song. And so we can use songs that we really resonate with, or maybe their music therapist might bring in a song that you might really resonate with. And through those lyrics, you can talk about your experiences. It might be, learning an instrument to give you something to focus on. I've worked with people who I've taught like ukulele during chemo treatments, so that way they have something that they're able to do and to focus on while they're receiving chemo. And it's something that is, helps us work toward a goal, helps us express ourselves, and you can learn song on ukulele. So not only are we learning a new skill, but we're also able to process things through the songs that you choose and the way that the melody sounds and all of the structural components of music. Of course, listening to music to help us calm during times of stress. We all know about music and mindfulness and meditation and how nice, soft, and slow music can make us feel maybe really calm. For others, it might make us feel super amped up, and same with the opposite. Making music together in community. And I do a lot of songwriting with folks or poem writing to celebrate or commemorate special milestones, whether that's getting to ring the bell, whether that's getting transported out of the ICU to be able to finally go home, or even just being able to write your own song or Frankenstein some experience only through the words, but then also getting to choose the structural components of music that might impact that. What does our melody sound like? What are those like accompaniments and instruments that we hear in other songs that evoke those emotions into us? And how can we put that into your song? So the reason why music is really cool, and this is the opportunity where I get to nerd out for a little bit, is that music is processed all over the brain. So when we think about listening to a song, there is so much going on inside our heads that we don't even realize. We are thinking, this is kind of a diagram that very simply shows it all, but essentially when we're listening to music, right, we're hearing the lyrics. So we are, using our auditory systems to hear that and interpret it. And then we're using our logic and our knowledge of language to be able to understand what the lyrics are saying. And then comes in our memory and our frontal lobe and our thinking and predicting of, we know these lyrics. So then our memory centers are lit up, or we're predicting or knowing what lyric is next. So that's our planning and thinking centers. When I talk about like hearing, we're hearing the sounds and the notes. Our brainstem, our most vital part of our brain, is the thing in our body that processes rhythm. It's why it regulates our heartbeat, it regulates our walking speed. And so when we think about when we just start to groove to music, or when we can't help it but dance, or maybe you're playing an instrument or singing while you're making music, you can see how all of these areas of the brain are being involved just in one simple experience of listening to music. And then there's the idea of playing an instrument. So then you have all of the motor coordination and the hand-eye coordination and reading music. So it really activates our entire brain. And that's the beauty of it, is that music can exist as distraction, but it can also exist in intentional engagement. Because when you're playing music, when you're listening to music, and similar to art, when you're within that process, it's really difficult to think about anything else. And so we get to use that in music therapy and in music coping strategies to be able to take our energy and intentionally engage that energy in a specific experience within creative expression. So some of the ways that I have used music therapy, it's not the right way of saying that, but some of the ways that I have worked with folks who have cancer within music therapy, is really using music as a creative outlet for processing events and coming up with coping strategies that are meaningful. I use a lot of music and mindfulness, or music along with deep breathing techniques, to support pain management, discomfort management, stress, and relaxation. Our bodies love when we have an external pulse that it can match to. It's the reason why when we're like walking down the street or we're taking a run, we really like when our running pace matches the beat of the song. It feels really good. So our bodies love that. And so by listening to music that is, let's say you're feeling really anxious, really uncomfortable, and really stressed, and that's contributing to more tightness and more tension in your body, which might be contributing to more pain. Listening to a song that has a really slow speed or a really low tempo can be really supportive in helping our body respond to that external pulse and matching it internally. So it's this fancy word in music therapy, we call it rhythmic entrainment. And it essentially means our body's matching our internal pulse matching to an external pulse. And so that's a really important skill to be able to use in music therapy, and to be able to use with music. I'll talk about some of the ways that you all can use kind of that principle at home. A band or an orchestra, even in fourth grade, even in elementary school in your group music class, there's something about working together toward a common goal and sharing in music that is so transformative and can connect you with other people who have a shared experience. And then I have a brief story I want to share. So I'll talk about this. All of these details of the story have been changed to protect this patient's confidentiality, but I found it easier to put a name to this person, so I'll speak about Paul. And he chose this name, by the way. So as I said before, I work in intensive care. And so the way that I work with folks experiencing cancer is a little bit different than how I might on the outpatient side of things. So I usually meet folks who are navigating a cancer diagnosis at, first diagnosis, or at any really intense complications that might emerge. So I met Paul after his bone marrow transplant. He had a blood cancer, and this was his, last step toward full recovery and cure. So after his transplant, he was struggling with a lot of anxiety. The environment of an ICU, and something that I hope you all have never experienced before, but the environment of an ICU sometimes doesn't feel human. There's machines and alarms and constant interruptions because people are checking in and making sure that you're feeling okay. And so music became his way to cope when everything else felt out of control. So I would come in and we would listen to songs that were familiar to him and use those simple music-based relaxation techniques to get him through those really hard moments of anxiety and pain. I would guide him through music-assisted relaxation with these slow and steady rhythms, with gentle guitar patterns, and helping his breath synchronize to the sound that I was playing, and gradually decreasing that tempo or the speed of the music I was playing over time to help his breath regulate. Sometimes he chose the music that he wanted to listen to, other times I did, and so he began to associate certain songs with calm, with control, and with getting through into the next period. It didn't change, where he was, but it made everything feel a little less overwhelming. And that there was still this piece of his normal life with him, even while experiencing such an abnormal environment like an intensive care unit. And when he moved down to the oncology floor, things improved physically. He was doing really well physically, but emotionally, his experience in intensive care stayed with him. And instead of trying to talk about it directly, he ended up using song lyrics to process what he had been through. One of the songs that he had really resonated with was a Beatles song called "In My Life," and the song talks a lot about reflecting on the things that one has experienced or seen in their life. And while we were just playing it and listening to it one day, and he had a really tearful reaction, and so we started to talk about what lyrics he was really identifying with. And he started talking and pulling lines out from the song about survival, about feelings of loss, identity changes, and uncertainty, and loneliness. And sometimes there were single lines from a song that said exactly what he couldn't. So we would talk about those lyrics and sometimes even rewrite them to reflect his own experience. And after he was discharged, a different challenge showed up. After his bone marrow transplant, he was declared completely cured of his blood cancer that he had dealt with for 10 years of his life. And so he was trying to figure out who he was without cancer being the center of everything in his life. And that part surprised him. And he told me he started writing his own poems and songs about his experience and the things that were emerging for him. They weren't about being strong or positive or coming out the other side. They were honest. And one of his songs centered on identity, with the chorus repeating the single idea of, I don't know who I am without it. And when I asked him what it meant, what was the thing that you don't know who you are without it, he thought for a moment and he said, the cancer, the fight, all of it. It was everything for so long. And so through songwriting, he was able to explore that uncertainty and write about being seen differently by others, having the rhetoric of the strong, brave, inspirational things that people are telling you, while also he was feeling internally unsure and sometimes really disconnected from that. He wrote about gratitude and grief existing at the same time, and about surviving but not feeling entirely unchanged emotionally. And so music looked different at each stage for him. In the ICU, it helped him get through the moment. Afterward, it helped him understand what he had been through and really process that traumatic experience for him. And later, it helped him figure out who he was becoming. It was something that was normal, then it was grounding, then it was process, and then it was exploration.
All right. So after all that, we're going to pause again with an art and music experiential. So earlier, Gemma would have sent an email to folks with a gingerbread man attached to that email. And hopefully, you have some colored pencils or markers or something nearby. And if you didn't get a chance to print out the gingerbread man in advance, this is a perfect opportunity to test that process over product we were talking about. Just draw your own gingerbread man. Don't worry about what it looks like. Um, just have heads, arms, legs, body. Um, and we're gonna actually do this before the music experiential as well as after as a way of checking in with yourself. So, with this gingerbread man that you have either printed out or drawn before you, and the markers and colored pencils around you, just use lines, shapes, and colors to do a quick body scan and just note any physical, somatic, emotional sensations that you feel in your body. And again, use lines, shapes, and colors to depict it. You don't need to change or adjust anything that you feel in your body. This is a way for you to just from head to toe scan through what it is that you're feeling in your body and express that on the page. You can also think about things you might want to put on the outside of your gingerbread man. If there are things you're hearing, or the environment you're in, or maybe the environment, the day that you had, things that are influencing maybe what it is that you're feeling in your body right now. You can use words as well if that's helpful. And we'll just take these next 2 minutes to just continue to scan and depict that on the page.
So as we get into this music experience, I want you to find a comfortable position to sit in. And either allow your eyes to gently close or soften your gaze for a little bit. And I want you to tune into your body and make any adjustments that you need to be as comfortable as you can. That might look like rolling your neck, putting your shoulders down, anything that gives you a feeling of ease, but also awareness. So we'll start with a little bit of concentration practice just to help our minds settle and arrive in our present time experience. So I want you to breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. And in and out. And we'll do one more. Breathe in and out. You can keep breathing along to that speed. I'll keep the music nice and consistent. Or you can allow your body to resume to natural breathing. Whichever you're doing, I want you to feel where in the body that you're feeling your breath. It might be in your stomach, in your abdomen, wherever you can feel your body breathe. It might be in your chest, where you might notice the expansion and contraction as your body inhales and exhales. Maybe it's in your nostrils, where you can feel a slight tickle as the air comes in and the subtle warmth as your body exhales. And I want you to pick one of these spots to stick with for this meditation practice. As you feel your body breathing, try to stay with that breath all the way through. Stick with it from the beginning of the inhale all the way through the end of the exhale. Your mind wandering away from your body. And when the mind wanders, it really offers us an opportunity to cultivate mindfulness and concentration. Each time we notice our mind wandering, we're strengthening that ability to recognize our experience and recognize what's happening in our bodies. And each time we bring the mind back to the breath, we're strengthening our ability to focus on one thing. So when your mind wanders, just treat it as an opportunity rather than a problem, and just return to your breath. begin the practice of mindfulness by bringing to mind yourself as you sit here right now. Try to connect with your own deepest intentions for happiness, ease, and safety. You don't need to think about exactly what would make you happy right in this moment or exactly what would put you at ease in this moment. But just connect with that natural desire that you have to feel that comfort. You can cultivate this intention to open the heart with your own well-being by silently offering yourself some phrases of self-compassion. So in your head, slowly offer yourself these phrases that I'll share. First one is, I love myself. I honor myself. I hear myself. And I trust myself. You can offer these phrases silently in your head, saying them slowly enough that you can really connect with their meaning and the intention behind them. I'll repeat them again. It's, I love myself. I honor myself. I hear myself. And I trust myself. And if there's anything else that you need to hear, I encourage you to say it to yourself. Now you can bring your mind to a good friend or someone in your support system. It might be a loved one, a friend, a teacher, a mentor, maybe a pet. And I want you to just connect with your natural desire to see this person or this animal just happy and at ease. Just like you, this person wants to be happy, to feel safe, to feel comfortable, to feel at ease, and to feel free. So to cultivate this intention of kindness, I want you to offer this person or this animal a few phrases. It's the same ones we repeated. I love you. I honor you. I hear you. And I trust you. Now bring it back to yourself one more time. In your head, slowly offer yourself the phrases of self-compassion. I love myself. I honor myself. I hear myself. And I trust myself. Repeat that one more time. take some breaths together. Here it comes. Inhale and exhale. Again, inhale and exhale. Two more. Inhale and exhale. Last one together. Inhale, exhale. When you feel ready, I want you to gently open your eyes and focus your gaze back to the present moment. Stretch out your fingers, then your arms, and then work that stretch through your body until you feel back to your present self. And thank you all.
And so um, take that piece of paper you had and turn it over, um, and see if you can trace that gingerbread man again or redraw it. And again, this time, do another body scan. Use the different materials in front of you to depict whatever emotions or sensations that you're feeling in your body, the thoughts that you might be having on the inside as well as the outside of the gingerbread man. Take the next 1 to 2 minutes, use line shapes and colors to depict that. As you're working on it, just notice if the sounds that the markings you're making are different than the ones that you had made before. Take note if the colors that you're gravitating towards are a little bit different than before. And just notice if there are areas of tension that you depicted earlier and how that's feeling right now. And try to find a good wrapping up point. And this may have been a long period of time, a short period of time for you in the art making. Kind of depends on each person. But even if you use that gingerbread man check person checkpoint at any point, with or without a meditation, it can be a really great way to check in with yourself and create a moment of pause kind of throughout your day.
So, engaging in creative arts in any way that might be, whether it is something like art therapy or music therapy, listening to music, seeing a piece of art at a museum, watching a play, watching an opera. Art can bring up a lot of feelings, and I hear this from a lot of people that I work with of we'll listen to a song together, one that they've heard their entire life, and we listen to it together one time and it feels suddenly really overwhelming or suddenly really emotional. And that's because art is a really powerful substance and it can make us feel all sorts of ways. Some of us might feel really calmed by things like mindfulness and deep breathing. Others of us might feel really overwhelmed or really anxious, might feel worried, might feel hopeful, grateful, all of those things. But arts can really exacerbate emotions or cause emotions to emerge that sometimes we didn't even know were there. And so I wanted just to share this again, Lindsay Brahman drawing of all of the types of things that you might be feeling even in just one art experience.
All right, so now we'll go into some of the benefits of creative arts therapies. The first two is create distance, new perspective, and increase distress tolerance. So, an example I like to use, and of course mine will be arts based. Jamie, if you have one, feel free to chime in. Um, but for example, if you were to use art to express an emotion like anger, um, you are verbally expressing that is one thing, but if I ask you to depict that through art, right, you are now viewing anger from a different lens, right? What color is it? How much space does it take up? Does it have sharp lines, wavy lines, and you might have depicted some of these things in your body scan. And in doing so, it actually increases our tolerance around a difficult emotion like anger, right? Talking about anger may bring up that emotion differently than if we're using art to express it. And so, in doing so, we're able to tolerate and sit with that emotion a little bit longer than maybe if we were just using words. Art, music, any of the creative arts, writing, it can increase a sense of control. It can increase mind body connection, and hopefully that's something you were able to connect with through our earlier experiential. It can decrease depressive symptoms and anxiety, and it can document and map progress over time. Right? So, again, using an art example, right, I always encourage people to date and write a few words on the back of their art piece. Moments that sometimes I'm working with someone and they're feeling stuck. We might look at a piece that they made earlier, a couple months ago, and it documents exactly how they were feeling at that time and be able to recognize, hey, actually, I'm maybe a little less stuck than I thought I was. And it, of course, can ground and regulate during periods of stress.
So, music is super physiological. There's a lot of reasons for that we had talked about because of the way that it can modulate our energy so significantly. So, music and creative arts therapies can reduce fatigue and increase energy, lower our pain perception, reduce our stress hormone levels and the presence of stress in our bodies and how it is impacting our bodies physiologically. It can regulate our amygdala, which is our stress and our anxiety and our fight or flight center in our brain, that kind of lights up or alerts when there's something that we are perceiving as stress inducing or anxiety inducing. Um, they can help regulate our amygdala, help support brain fog, increase neuroplasticity. So, really um, increasing our neural connections and creating new experiences and new ways of looking at things that help support our brain health as well. Can improve sleep. And like I had said before, with music specifically, really regulate our heart rate and those stress signals in the body.
All right, so now we'll discuss some ways that you can creatively cope at home. So there's a lot of different art-based mindfulness strategies. So earlier, that gingerbread person is a great tool to use in your own time. It's accessible as long as you just have paper and a few different colors um, in a drawing medium. There's also different YouTube channels that offer like meditation mixed with art making together that you can try to find one that works for you and a length of time that works for you too. Deep breathing art. So that is an exercise I really like to do to just help me notice my breath and then start moving towards deep breathing. So you take any art material and you kind of move up and down with your breath. You could also do circles, so starting inward and making a spiral outward just as you're breathing. And you can kind of slow your breath down as you slow down your mark making as well. Another thing you can do is to draw within a blank circle. So sometimes a blank piece of paper can be really intimidating. You're kind of like, where do I start? So I like to just take the cup or a bowl or something that's nearby, outline a circle, and just draw within that. You can, again, use line, shapes, and colors to express what it is that you're feeling or just doodle within that circle. Another thing you can do is visual journaling. So if you tend to gravitate towards writing, you can find ways to incorporate drawing with it too. So I really encourage people to get a journal with outlines so that you're not limiting it to just words, but you can be incorporating drawings with it or finding different visual journal prompts. You can just look some up online and we can also send some after this call. Gemma, we might ask you to just send that out to participants afterwards. Affirmation cards. Just getting a small 3x5 card or piece of paper and writing down an affirmation and just decorating it. There's something about writing and using our hand that helps connect with our brain differently than when we're typing it out. And, you know, affirmations are sometimes confused with things like toxic positivity, but they really are things affirming things that are true, right? So I am giving myself permission to grieve, right? I'm giving myself permission to say no today. Different ways that we can connect with affirmations and find a way to ground in the moment. Zen tangling is another strategy that incorporates different patterns and lines and repetition that can be really regulating. Um, Nature-based art, so there's a couple different ways you could go with this. Taking a walk outside, finding and gathering different materials and putting that together either outside and knowing that that's something that will kind of disappear over time, right? If you put leaves in a certain shape or design. The other alternative is to take different materials and bring it inside, right? And use that to create something and mix it with different mediums. Collaging, I am sure People have magazines, catalogs, things that are kind of just gathering dust. Use that. You can cut out different images and put them together. I really recommend that for people who maybe feel intimidated by drawing. It's a great way to access images that are already made that you can put together. And then don't underestimate a good scribble. I mean, just scribble, even if it's for 30 seconds, it can be really relieving. Sometimes I suggest people to use both hands and just scribble at the same time with both hands. There can be something really cathartic about that, as far as just finding an outlet for some of the things that you might be feeling. All right, next slide.
And if you connect creatively to music, any type of music based mindfulness tools, you know, even things like, apps like Headspace or Better Sleep or any of those kind of recorded guided meditations, anything that has kind of like soft, calm music in the background can be really regulating. To involve a little bit of art music crossover, painting, coloring, drawing, along to grounding music. So, similar to how Jane was talking about the experience of mapping your breath and drawing along with just noticing your breath, draw along with music. If it's a song that's really, that it feels like swirls or feels like scribbles, what does that feel like? What does that sound like? What does that look like on paper? So turning music into something that looks more tangible. Creating playlists for different periods of time, for chemo, for home treatments, ones you can listen to during radiation, ones you can listen to in the car, playlists when you can listen to at home when you're feeling anxious or when you're feeling sad. When I create playlists, I like to create a kind of arc with them. So I have a bunch of different playlists that are like, play this when you're feeling really angry, play this when you're feeling really excited. And they have this arc to them where I'll set them up where at the beginning, the songs, if let's say for anger, if I'm feeling really, really upset, the songs will be super ragey and super energetic, and all of those songs that I listen to when I want to just punch a wall. And as the playlist goes on, it'll soften. And grow in a way that when the time that I'm done listening to the playlist, I've gotten out that energy and I'm able to focus more on what I need to do. Stretching or moving your body to music that matches to your energy levels or moves it to where you want to be. So similar to our playlists, listening to, if we really need to wake up that day, or if we really need to calm down or go to sleep and we're having a lot of racing thoughts and it's really difficult, start with listening to some music that might match your energy level. Maybe if you're feeling really, really, like you need to keep moving, like you've been busy all day, listen to a song that you might like bump at a dance party. Like I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston, or something that feels a little bit faster. And stretch your body, move your body along to it, really get your body's rhythm into it, and gradually choose songs that are a little bit slower, a little bit calmer. So that way by the end of this exercise, you're now moving with slower rhythms and moving your body in maybe bigger ways or smaller ways, and things that feel more grounding to you. You can learn a new instrument. There's so many resources online. If you're not connected with like a music teacher or a music therapist or a music tutor or a lessons teacher, there's so many tutorials and things like that online to learn instruments, especially instruments like piano, ukulele, or guitar, which are my personal favorites because they're self-accompanying instruments, meaning that you can play a song and you can sing the song as well. So if there's lyrics that you're feeling like you need to express, you can do that while you're playing those songs. And that's a tool to be able to use anywhere. But I see a lot of my patients use this while they're receiving treatments or to focus on something different. Or you can also, if you're interested, you can get lessons for an instrument and start to pick it up that way. Taking a walk along to the pace of music. Songwriting, so writing about your experience, or my favorite thing is to take like lyrics from different songs that I resonate with and create a song out of that, or doing blackout poetry with song lyrics. So that's where you would take, a printout or a document of song lyrics and circle words in those lyrics or phrases that you identify with or that you resonate with, and black out everything that is not those circled words and create a poem using the leftover words. And that might help you gain some insight into how you're feeling. And if you're interested in connecting further with these resources within a therapeutic context, Jane and I have listed some ways to get in contact with creative arts therapists. So on my end, there are multiple hospitals in the area that offer music therapy support. So I know like Hopkins does, I know Inova has music therapists. I know that for our adolescent population, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia does, and so many other hospitals in this area have music therapists that support specifically within oncology. There's there's many music therapy private practices in the area that have groups, either just mental health groups or movement groups or oncology specific support groups. There's virtual, in-person options. There's community-based organizations. Going on to the American Music Therapy Association's website, or if you just type in "find a music therapist," that's also a great way to find someone in your area that might be able to support you in that way.
Likewise, this QR code will link you to the American Art Therapy Association where you can find an art therapist. But if you are in the DMV or Baltimore area, a lot of private practices have art therapists that accept insurance. Um, like Jamie mentioned, we're at the hospitals, different community-based organizations. And of course, where I work, Inova Peterson Life with Cancer, we have the option for individual sessions for both music and art therapy, as well as groups. And it's offered for both peds oncology and adult oncology. Next slide. So I did just want to highlight a few upcoming programs. If some of the things that we were discussing today resonated with you, at Life with Cancer, we offer a few different programs. The first is Healing Through Art Therapy, which is a monthly group. They're both virtual and in-person options. We also have music therapy offered weekly as a group, and that is virtual. I also have a series coming up called Turning the Page. It's using the altered book process, if that's
Mm.
something you're familiar with, or if not, it is where you take an old book and you are repurposing it and giving it new life and new meaning and using it almost like a journal. I will be starting that series on May 14th in the evening. It's virtual and I do mail supplies for everybody. And then lastly, we have a new upcoming group called Pause, Ground, and Create. And that's going to be a monthly group starting in June. And it is just a 1 hour mindfulness focused group. So it will rotate between the different art and music therapists at Life with Cancer to offer something mindfulness based, and it will be virtual as well. And it'll be in the middle of the day so that it can really create that pause in the middle of someone's day. And the QR code in the corner is to our calendar that allows you to register for any of these programs that you might be interested in. Great. Well, thank you so much. That is what we have for today. Jamie and my contact information is listed here, so we'd love to connect if you have any questions. And we so appreciate you being here and listening and engaging in our experiential.